There's something unsettling about the way memories get trapped in photographs, frozen, silent, yet vibrating with something unspoken. Ethan had seen the picture 100 times before, but this time, something pulled him in deeper. Maybe it was the way his grandmother's smile looked a little forced, or the shadow that shouldn't have been there in the background. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, or why exactly he couldn't stop staring at it. But the more he zoomed in, the more that quiet summer photo from 1997 stopped feeling like a memory and started feeling like a message. And then he saw it, a face in the window, just behind the curtain, watching, smiling, uninvited. What makes a family photo feel wrong? Is it the expressions, too perfect to be real? Or is it the hidden things we're not supposed to notice? Sometimes it's not the people in the foreground who carry the truth, but the ones we never meant to capture. Ethan always believed his family's past was exactly what he'd been told. Tragic, yes, but simple. A car accident took his parents. He and his sister Emily were raised by their grandmother, Margaret, who held them together with quiet strength. But the man behind that curtain changed everything. That smile didn't belong to a stranger. It belonged to someone erased. Ethan was 34 now, a freelance graphic designer living in Boston, far from the old Whitmore family house in Vermont. He preferred silence, solitude, and late nights editing images for people he'd never meet. But when Margaret passed, something in him shifted. He hadn't returned to the house in years, but walking through those creaking hallways after the funeral, it was as if time bent backward. Every room still held her scent, lavender and lemon soap. Every drawer had memories buried under yellowing papers. And that's where he found it, the photo album. Leather-bound, heavy, and tucked away in the back of her closet, like something meant to be forgotten. He wasn't looking for answers, not at first. Sitting on the bedroom floor where he once built Lego castles, Ethan flipped through the album slowly, the way someone reads an old love letter they're not sure they should reopen. There were birthdays, Christmases, beach trips, but the last photo stopped him cold. Dated July 7th, 1997, the day of the accident. His father, Daniel, stood tall with his arm around Elaine. His mother, Margaret, sat smiling on the porch swing, little Emily on her lap, dressed in overalls and pigtails. Uncle Richard stood in the back, awkward, a little distant, like always. Ethan remembered being sick that day. A fever kept him home while the rest of the family left for the cabin. And then, the window. There, behind the curtain, barely visible unless you were looking for it. But he was there. A man, still, staring directly into the lens. His features weren't clear at first, but the shape of his face, the unnatural calm in his smile, the cold gleam in his eyes. It didn't take long before unease settled in Ethan's chest, like lead. He zoomed in, adjusted the lighting, sharpened the shadows. It wasn't a trick of the light. There was someone inside the house when that photo was taken. Someone no one ever mentioned. And Ethan was sure, completely, chillingly sure, that he had seen that face before. Somewhere in the recesses of memory, buried deep in his childhood. But who was he? And why? Had no one ever said a word? Ethan hadn't slept. The face in the window haunted him, not just because it didn't belong there, but because it felt familiar. Not immediately, not clearly, but like something hiding at the edge of memory. That smile, twisted and vague, scratched at something deeper inside him than fear. Something colder, more primal. He had stared at the photograph for hours, pixel by pixel, adjusting the contrast, the shadows, even isolating the shape digitally. But no matter how much he analyzed, one truth remained. This man had been inside the house seconds before the family left, seconds before the crash that killed his parents, seconds before Emily, then just a toddler, became the only one left breathing. He kept asking himself, who was this man? Why was he inside their home? The second question hit harder. Why did no one ever mention him? Families don't just forget strangers watching from windows. And in all the years since the accident, no one had ever spoken of that day with anything but grief. But maybe grief had always been a curtain. And behind that curtain, truth had been staring right at them all along. That night, Ethan called his sister. Emily was quiet on the other end of the line. Always had been. At 30, she was married now, 2 kids, a school counselor in upstate New York. Balanced, grounded, but there was something in her silence that didn't feel like confusion. It felt like memory. "I need to ask you something," Ethan said, almost whispering. "Do you remember anything weird from that day, the cabin trip?" A pause. "Like what?" "Like a man in the house, someone we didn't know." Emily didn't answer right away. Then, "Why are you asking me this now?" "I found something in Grandma's album. The last picture? You're in it. She's holding you. And in the window behind you, there's someone watching." Another pause. Longer. "I think I remember him," Emily said finally. "But I don't think he was a stranger." That sentence wrapped around Ethan's spine like ice. "You remember him?" Emily hesitated. "Only pieces. He had dark hair, wore a brown coat. I don't remember his name, but I remember Dad yelling at him. In the garage, right before we left, I was playing with a stuffed giraffe, the one I used to sleep with. I dropped it when they started yelling." Ethan's hands went cold. "You never told me this." "No one ever asked." That was when Ethan knew, whatever this was, it wasn't just a coincidence. This wasn't a ghost in the glass. It was someone real, someone his father knew, someone who had no business being in their house. He decided to go back to the Whitmore house, not for memories, not for closure, but for answers. It had been 2 weeks since Margaret's funeral, but the house still smelled like her. Lavender, lemon oil, and that faint trace of old paper and time. Ethan walked the hall slowly, like stepping into a dream he couldn't control. In the hallway closet, he found a locked metal box he hadn't noticed before, buried beneath board games and Christmas decorations. The key was inside Margaret's Bible. Inside the box, letters, dozens of them, dated from 1982 to 1997, all addressed to Daniel Whitmore, his father, all signed by someone named Caleb Reeves. The name meant nothing to Ethan, but the last letter was dated July 5th, 1997, 2 days before the crash. It read, "Daniel, I told you this wouldn't stay buried. You think you can pretend it didn't happen, but some debts don't vanish with silence. I'm coming to talk, whether you like it or not. You owe me that." Caleb Ethan's heart hammered. He flipped the envelope. There was a return address in Creswell, a small town in Vermont, just 90 minutes away. He didn't think. He drove. Creswell was the kind of place where time slept. One gas station, a diner that looked like it hadn't changed since the 60s, and a post office where the woman behind the counter had known every name on every mailbox for decades. Ethan showed her the envelope. "Caleb Reeves," she repeated, eyes narrowing. "Yeah, he used to live out past the Mill Road. Big red house. Left town years ago. Some say he died, others say he just vanished." Ethan stood there, frozen. Was he related to the Whitmores? She stared at him. He was Daniel's half-brother. The words landed like thunder. His father's half-brother. A man Ethan had never heard of. A man no one had ever mentioned. A man who was in the photograph, watching from behind the curtain. He needed more. In the town records office, buried in dusty files and crumbling folders, Ethan found a birth certificate. Caleb Reeves, born 1965. Mother, Margaret Reeves. Later married, James Whitmore, meaning Caleb was Margaret's son, his grandmother's first child, making Caleb not just Daniel's half-brother, but Ethan's uncle. He stared at the document for a long time. Why had Margaret never mentioned him? Back at the house, Ethan went through more boxes, more letters, more photos. He started noticing something subtle in the family pictures from the 80s. A boy in the background, always turned slightly away, slightly blurred, like someone deliberately not meant to be seen. He wasn't just erased from memory, he was erased from history. In one letter from 1989, Margaret had written to Daniel, "You told me it was safer this way, that no one needed to know, but I still think of him every night. I wonder if he's warm, if he's eating, if he still hears my voice when he sleeps." Ethan sat there for hours shaking. They'd hidden him. Something terrible had happened, and they'd buried it. The crash, the accident, was it really an accident? Ethan returned to the final photo, and this time, something clicked, the way Caleb looked through the window. He wasn't just watching, he was waiting. That night, Ethan had a nightmare. In it, he was sick again, sick in bed. The house was dark. But he heard footsteps, slow, deliberate. Then his father's voice, sharp, tense, then a slam, then silence. He woke up gasping. Something was wrong with how that day had unfolded. He called Emily again. "Do you remember why Dad was yelling?" She was quiet. I think he found Caleb in the garage. I think Caleb wanted to go with us, and Dad said no." "Why?" "I don't know, but I remember Dad saying, 'You had your chance.' And then he slammed the door." Ethan's thoughts spiraled. What chance? What had Caleb done? The more he searched, the more he uncovered pieces. Caleb had struggled with mental illness. He'd spent time in and out of institutions. There were arrest records, minor incidents, nothing violent. But the most chilling was a record from 1995, a restraining order filed by Daniel Whitmore. Ethan's father had been afraid of his own brother. In the attic, Ethan found the last piece, a VHS tape, unmarked. He borrowed a player from a neighbor and sat on the carpet, heart racing. The tape started with static. Then, home video. Christmas 1996. Everyone was laughing, unwrapping gifts. Margaret, Daniel, Elaine, Emily, and Ethan, still a child. The camera moved suddenly, shaky, disoriented. Then a voice, deep, calm. "Daniel doesn't want me here, but I belong to this family too." Then Margaret's voice, off camera, soft, sad. "Please, Caleb, not now." Then Daniel's voice, "Turn it off." The screen went black. It was Caleb behind the lens, filming himself inside the family's life, uninvited, watching from inside. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He printed the photo again, full scale, pinned it to the wall. This wasn't just about a crash. This was about a man who'd been erased, a man who wanted back in, but who had become a threat. Ethan stared at the eyes in the window, and for the first time, he didn't feel fear. He felt pity, but also the weight of truth, and the crushing realization that his family had been living in silence, not out of protection, but out of shame. And maybe, just maybe, the accident was no accident at all. Ethan didn't remember falling asleep, but he woke up on the floor of the attic, stiff and cold, a beam of morning light cutting across the room. The VHS tape had rewound itself, as if the machine wanted him to watch again, but he didn't need to. That voice, low, heavy with resentment, had already carved itself into his brain. Caleb Reeves hadn't disappeared. He'd been silenced, covered up, forgotten on purpose. And now, 28 years later, Ethan had pulled him back into the light. Later that day, he called Emily and asked her to meet him at the house. He didn't tell her why, just that it was important. She showed up alone, wearing a gray coat and a nervous expression. The house felt colder now, not from the weather, but from everything they both knew and weren't saying. He led her to the attic without a word. When the tape finished playing, she didn't speak at first. She just stared at the black screen, her lips parted slightly. Ethan could see her piecing things together, remembering what she hadn't dared to remember. "That voice," she finally whispered. "I do remember it. I think Dad was protecting us," Ethan said quietly, "from something worse than we ever imagined." Emily nodded, her eyes glossing over. "But why didn't Grandma ever tell us?" Ethan looked around the attic, at the boxes of letters, the yellowing photos, the secrets folded neatly into time. Because if she did, we'd start asking questions, and she couldn't risk us knowing what really happened that day. He opened the metal box again and pulled out the last letter Caleb ever wrote, the one dated July 5th, 1997. Emily read it slowly, hands trembling. He said Dad owed him something. "What do you think it was?" "I think Caleb wanted to be part of this family, officially, publicly. But Dad refused, probably for good reason." Ethan hesitated. "But I also think Caleb wasn't just some unstable man. He was angry, and maybe he was desperate." They fell into silence, the kind only siblings can share, thick with emotion, sharp with understanding. Then Ethan pulled out the photo again, the one that started it all. They both stared at the face in the window. "Do you think he caused the crash?" Emily finally asked. It was the question Ethan had avoided for days. He wanted to believe it had been an accident, a cruel twist of fate. But the timing, the letter, the look in Caleb's eyes, it all pointed to something more deliberate. "I don't know," Ethan said, "but I think Caleb followed them. Maybe he wanted to confront Dad one last time. Maybe he snapped, Emily lowered her gaze. But he didn't kill me. I was in that car. I survived. Yeah, maybe he didn't mean for anyone to die, Ethan offered. Or maybe he didn't care who got hurt. Either way, their lives had been forever shaped by that moment. And now, nearly 3 decades later, the truth had finally surfaced. Ugly, twisted, but real. They couldn't run from it anymore. That night, after Emily had gone home, Ethan sat in Margaret's old bedroom, the same one where he'd first found the photo album. The silence in the house was different now. He could almost feel her there, watching him, waiting for him to decide what came next. He opened her Bible again. There, between Psalms and Proverbs, was a folded paper he hadn't seen before. A note written in Margaret's careful handwriting. Ethan, if you're reading this, it means you found the picture. And if you found the picture, you deserve the truth. Caleb was my son. Before I met your grandfather, he was troubled from the start. Not evil, never that, but hurt. And sometimes hurt. People hurt others. Daniel tried to help him for years, but Caleb wanted more than help. He wanted to rewrite the past. The day of the accident, he showed up unannounced. There was shouting. Daniel told him to leave. He didn't. I don't know what happened on the road. I only know what the police told me, that the brakes failed, that there were no skid marks. But I never believed it was just a coincidence. I kept the photo because I couldn't bear to throw it away. I kept the truth because I didn't want it to become your burden. But maybe you were always meant to find it. Maybe you're the only one strong enough to carry it. Forgive me. Love, Grandma. Ethan folded the letter slowly, his eyes burning. Everything made sense now. The silence, the missing brother, the strange tension at every holiday, the shadows that lingered in corners of the house, and the smile in the window. 3 months passed. The house had been cleaned out, sold to a young couple expecting their first child. Ethan had moved back to Boston, but something in him had shifted. He kept the album, the letters, the tape. He didn't try to explain the story to anyone, not fully. Some truths belonged only to those who lived them. But one rainy evening, as he sat at his desk drinking black coffee, Ethan opened his laptop and scanned the photo one last time. Not to look for anything, not to uncover more, but to accept it. Every family has ghosts. Some just leave clearer fingerprints than others. He stared at the face in the window, not with fear, not with anger, but with understanding. Caleb had wanted to be seen, and now, finally, he was. As Ethan closed the laptop, he glanced toward the photo frame on the wall. The same picture, this time cropped, printed in black and white. But he had left the curtain in view, not to haunt himself, but to remind him. Some truths deserve to be remembered, no matter how painful, no matter how long they've been hiding. Did you enjoy this story? Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Enjoy, and comment below about your experience listening to this story.